In this tutorial, we'll be taking a look at the date calculation procedure in the eFORMz composer. The date calculation procedure adds or subtracts a time interval, be it years, months, days, hours, minutes, or seconds, to or from a timestamp. And the timestamp that we prefer to use here is the Parse Date function in eFORMz, and this parses text representing a date or time into a timestamp, the number of milliseconds since January 1st, 1970. This is commonly known as Unix time or Unix epoch time. And then you use a date format which specifies the format of the text. So that all sounds complicated, and you just want to calculate a date. So how do we do that? What does it look like? We're going to go through it right now. So we have open here a sample, and I have just one bit of data here, just one little piece of information, and that's a date, an invoice date. So we're going to go ahead and add a variable by right-clicking and selecting Add Variable, and note that this is XML data, and we'll go ahead and select OK, and we've picked up the relevant piece of data. Now what I would like to do is I would like to have a due date, and let's say I want the due date 30 days later. So I have my invoice date July 31st, 2014. Well, I want my invoice date to be 30 days later, August 30th, 2014. How do I calculate that due date? Well, first things first, we're going to create a variable by position and set it to 30 days. So let's go ahead and right-click the invoice form and select Add Variable by Position. And we're going to go ahead and call this due date days, and select OK, and we're going to set this variable to a value of 30. And to do that, we will right click it and select Add Function, Set Value, and we'll go ahead and enter 30 as a constant value and select OK. So we have our number of due date days. We're going to set our invoice date and add 30 to it, but how do we do that? Well, we're going to need to add two more variables. First, we're going to need a variable for parsing out the date. So let's go ahead and right click our form again and select Add Variable by Position. We're going to call this invoice date parsed, because we're going to parse this thing out, and select OK. First thing we're going to need to do is set its value, and we want it to be the same as our invoice date. So we'll right click the variable, select Add Function, Set Value, and we're going to set it to the variable invoice date and select OK. And to this same variable, we're going to right click it again, and we're going to select Add Function, and we're going to select Parse Date. And the Parse Date dialog will display, and it's going to ask us for a date format. I would recommend just entering a constant value here. This can be a little tricky because Parse Date parses text representing a date time into a timestamp, so the number of milliseconds since January 1 of 1970. So it looks at years, months, days, hours, minutes, and seconds. So the important thing here is that when you're using a date format for months, you do capital M's, because if you do lowercase m's, it's going to confuse it and it's going to look for minutes. We don't want to look for minutes, we want to look for months. So we'll do capital M's, backslash, and then we can go lowercase dd for days and yy for years, and that's going to give us a format of months, days, years for parsing our date. So we'll go ahead and select OK for that. That looks fine. And if you look here in the variables window here, you'll see, well, we've got something here. And this is basically the months, days, years in milliseconds from the date that we added from 1970. So if that number doesn't look like it makes sense, just remember that that's a milliseconds is what that number is in. So from January 1st, 1970. So don't be confused if you don't know what that number means immediately. Finally, we're going to add one more variable, and this is going to be to for our due date. In other words, we're going to take the calculation and set a variable with the due date. So we're going to right click our form and select add variable by position, and we can just call this invoice due date. That is easy enough to remember. So we have that, and we're just going to leave that right now as it is because we don't really need to set it, because we're going to be setting it with our date calculation procedure. So that's what this is about, date calculation procedure, and we haven't done it yet, but now we have the groundwork. So let's go to our form and right click that, and we're going to add a precondition procedure, and that'll be date calculation. And the procedure properties will display, let's give this procedure a name, we'll call it invoice due calc, since we're calculating the due date. And we will use the variable invoice date parsed, because this is going to have our parsed invoice date using the Unix time, using the calculation. We'll select OK. And here's where our due date days variable, where we set the value to 30 for 30 days, is where this comes in. We'll select that variable, and we want to make sure that this little box here can be a little trouble. Sometimes you'll forget it. We want to make sure that it's days is what we're calculating. We don't want it to be 30 seconds. That wouldn't help us out. So we'll select OK there. We got that. Obviously, nothing doing yet. We're getting there. We want to right-click the actions dialog here, the icon I should say, right above where we just added the action, and we'll add another one here, add action, and we are going to add date format. And you can choose a variety of date formats, medium date, long date, and a variety of others. We'll just keep it simple with short date. That's the one that most people tend to use, especially with invoices. And we'll select OK. And we're going to add one more action. We'll right click that action icon again and then select add action, and we are going to add a set variable way at the top there. And once we have that, it'll ask us what variable we want to set, and we want to set that invoice due date variable that we created last, and select OK. And look at that. If you notice down in our variable dialog, you'll see August 30th 2014 is our invoice due date, exactly 30 days from our invoice date. And of course, to take it to the next level, you could easily place this date on a form by simply right-clicking and selecting Add Rule, Place Text, and selecting Invoice Due Date, OK, and selecting OK again, and there it is. You have the date placed. So that is more or less how you calculate a date in eFORMz. You can also very easily change the due date days to whatever you want. Let's say you want it due in 60 days, and this should give us a total, I think it should total out to September 29th if my math is correct. And it does. Down here in the window we see that, and of course since we placed it now we can see it here in the form. So that is a brief look at how to use the date calculation procedure in the eFORMz Composer.